Hey, welcome to the podcast, everyone. My name is Daniel, as in Ghost Guy Daniel. Now, it's the holidays right now. There's not too much going on. I think with the impending lockdown, everybody at this point is just kind of laying low and enjoying the holidays as best they can. So I'm going to probably keep this one short. I have a few things I want to talk about, and a couple small little articles that I thought would be fun for the Strange News segment. But we'll keep it light, we'll keep it interesting, and it'll be done before you know it. Now, today on the podcast, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about a cool new Netflix show I enjoyed. That's something you can watch during the lockdown. I've combined open talk and real ghosts, because it kind of covers both. It's going to be on the subject of why haunted houses are creepy and abandoned. You know, when you see them in horror movies, that's usually how they look. And in the Strange News segment, I chose a article that's about a haunted house that sells for a loss. I personally would pay more for it, but this one sold for a loss. They call it a ghost discount. And the second one is a Mark Twain related ghost story that's out of St. Louis. Caught my attention. So I haven't read those. I'm interested in reading them with you today. Update on out-of-body experiences. The update is no update. I'm still working on it. I feel that I'm close. It's funny. I'm in that zone. I'm lying there, trying to shut down the body, trying to switch to this feeling of spirit, and I feel I'm there. And there's a couple times that the vibration starts, and I can get out, and then it doesn't work. Like I feel like I'm doing it. I don't know if it's out of fear or maybe something like a pain in my body is bringing me back. I'm not sure what it is. So at this point, what I'm doing is I'm just focusing on the feeling of relaxation in those moments. I saw that in a video. I'm sorry, I forget the name of the person who did the video. Just to focus on the relaxation and not use any visual methods, which makes sense because the visual methods kind of connect you to your physical body. So for that reason, I don't think they'd be a good mix. So maybe just have the intention at the beginning. You know, I'm going to leave my body, I'm going to have this experience, and then just focus on relaxation until it actually occurs. And that's what I'm working on right now. So meditation has become a big thing for me. The ability to have many moments of complete calm. So at this point, when I meditate, I've gotten to that point where I have the feeling, and anybody who's like experienced meditators out there, you know what I'm talking about, where you kind of leave a physical sense. So you're not counting the seconds anymore. You're not being interrupted by your anxieties or your pains in your body. That you get to this moment of freedom. You don't really care anymore. How can I describe it? It's almost like you're inside your own body, not trapped, and that you have complete focus and control of everything. So my body is 100% still, not even my toes or my fingers are wiggling, nothing. And the other part of it too is I don't even realize I'm breathing. This one kind of freaked me out at first, but now I kind of like it. I don't even know if I'm breathing. Maybe I'm not. Or maybe it's so shallow you don't even feel it, and you, as well, in the back of your mind, you don't care how long it lasts. It just feels so calm. It feels so nice. Blissful. Blissful is a good word, and I could be in that feeling for hours, and even if my legs fell asleep or anything, I wouldn't even notice it happening. So what I'm getting at is I've gotten to the point that about 10-15 minutes on good days. Not all days are good. Some days, like yesterday and today, I feel a little bit off center. So then I need to do a little more meditation. It's not as rewarding, but it's still is decent calm. So about 10-15 minutes on good days, I can get into that feeling. And I think as I expand that, it'll eventually be to the point where I can work that into an out-of-body experience, and I believe they're related. If anybody disagrees with me on that, if they know that they're not related, please do let me know, either on Facebook through Ghost Guy Daniel or through email, ggdaniel@ghostwalks.com. Okay, so you know what? Future podcast, I'll talk about meditation. I'm not going to get too far into that now. Meditation as related to psychic abilities and spiritualism. Not now. Technically, I'm not ready. If I talk about it, it's just going to be from conjecture. I like it. I like from the maybe this get an expert in a psychic or whatnot. Maybe that will be one of my first interviews that I do, and then we can talk about the properties and rewards of meditation. Shout out to an artist, Dean Morrissey. I've never met you. I don't even know how you look, but I do know you are a talented artist. I found a beautiful artwork of Scrooge, Ebenezer Scrooge, walking on a snow-filled street in front of his business, Scrooge and Marley, and it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful image. Now, I don't have the link to send out to anybody, but if you want to see it, the Ghost Walks Facebook fan page. So go to Facebook on Christmas morning, actually afternoon. So I think it goes up just around noon, and it will post, and you can see that beautiful artwork. There's a link to Dean Morrison's page if anybody wants to buy a print of it. It's absolutely stunning. One of the nicest pieces of art related to Scrooge and A Christmas Carol that I've ever seen. So shout out Dean Morrissey, wonderful artist. Dean, Dean, Morrissey, Morrissey. Recommended Netflix show, as I teased. It's called Alice in Borderland. It's not Canadian or American. It is Japanese. Wonderful show if anybody's looking for something to watch during the lockdown. It's creepy. It's not like a ghost show, but it's more like spooky fantasy, in the sense it's based on Alice in Wonderland, but it's done in a way that like gamers. It's sort of like these deadly games that people are forced to play. I'm not gonna get too far. I don't want to create any spoilers, but highly recommend it. Alice in Borderland on Netflix. So as I mentioned, the open talk and Ghosts Are Real sections are combined. So I'm going to take an early pause now. As a review, pauses are times that you can kind of use any type of tools you have to sense around you. Since we're going to be talking about ghosts, we might stir something up, especially if your house is haunted. This is an interesting way to see if something will happen. EMF detectors, cameras, recorders, any type of ghost tool that you want to use to see if something occurs. So take a moment, yell out into your house. If anybody's here, do something to prove that you are there. The most common saying in any investigation. So yell that out into the room, and we'll pause for a few seconds. So, is anybody there? I hope so. Unless you're scared by this stuff, then I hope not. So as I mentioned, I have combined the sections of Open Talk and Ghosts Are Real, because what I'm going to talk about kind of includes both of those elements. And the subject I want to get into today is why haunted houses are always depicted as creepy and abandoned. Now, when I do the downtown Hamilton ghost walk, when I'm leading them, I do kind of touch on this. It's not technically part of the script. I just added it myself because I'm so fascinated by the subject of what causes a building or a house to be haunted. So it's in front of Hamilton Place Theatre in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, where I'm from. And I talk about Hamilton Place being not that old. So it was built in the 1970s, which would technically make it about 50 years old. And when you think of haunted houses, you think 100 or more. You think they've been lived in by families, that there have been events, tragic and happy, that have created energy inside the space that eventually lead to ghostly experiences. When you think of haunted houses, that's what you think of, right? So Hamilton Place being so young, you wouldn't think it would have the energy to gain that. Now, I'm not going into the idea of theaters here, so just to touch on it, ghostly energy is related to living energy. Theaters have a constant bursts of these living energy through the shows that are put on, the emotions that are felt by the crowd and the actors and actresses. Basically builds the place up like a candle to the other side. Go into more detail in the future, but that's the idea behind Hamilton Place being haunted. But when you talk about a house, the idea that it's just one family living inside the house at any given time, and sometimes it's not even a family, sometimes it's a couple, maybe a couple with a dog, and you're not getting a lot of energy inside of a space. Like anywhere I live, there's really not a lot of energy happening in there. I'm a very laid back person. I am also kind of a mysterious, I guess. I'm not the most social butterfly that you would ever meet in your life. So any house that I live in is going to be calm. That there's really not much going on there. So combine those over generations, and you can say that a house would have to be on this earth for at least 100 years to have this build up, unless you have a house that has a burst of that energy. So by burst, what I'm talking about is, and this is sad to mention, but tragic events. So if a house is the stage to a tragic event, that stigma kind of hangs over it forever. I don't know if it's related to the house itself. You could talk about energy being sucked into the wood of a structure, as wood is kind of a living thing, trees, plants, and whatnot. I don't think drywall would suck in energy, but definitely I think wood would, and that house that has a lot of wood that could hold on to that type of energy. You could talk to me about drywall. You could talk to me about steel. I mean, it's all matter and it all exists in our reality, so it is energy, but maybe wood is even more. So older houses too, they use more real wood and not the pressed stuff you see in current houses today. So then you could also talk about, would historic houses be more haunted, say 100 years down the road? A historic house is 200 years old, a newer house is 100 years old. Would that newer house be as haunted as an older house would be? Again, it's off topic to what I'm talking about now, in a way. But the idea that I'm going to focus in on here is that the energy of tragic events and even happy events inside of a place leave that impression. So if a younger house has a really bad tragic event, the impression remains. If an older house has events over the years, then it just builds up over time. So each generation, it's just another piece. So then you have, ghosts from different generations that haunt a space. So there's your idea of energy. Energy building up in a house that creates it haunted. So why are haunted houses most creepy when they're old and abandoned? Well, abandoned kind of touches onto your subconscious. Because when you see an abandoned house or building, if you're anything like me, it's going to freak you out. So the idea that it's abandoned for a reason. Now you might think, oh, maybe it's just a bad neighborhood. There's many different neighborhoods, say in the city of Detroit, for example, where there's abandoned houses everywhere, and you think, okay, so the neighborhood chased them away. But if you get an abandoned house in a location that's not explained by being a bad place to live or scary in that sense, then there's really no reason for that to be the case. There's a house in Niagara-on-the-Lake that's a good example of that. It was the Ghost Walks fan page I've recently posted. If anybody wants to go look, there's photos of it. Niagara-on-the-Lake is a beautiful place to live, and this house, very rarely you're going to have a house that's abandoned like this, especially for 50 or 60 years, which has been sitting there like that for that long. So then you ask the question, well, what's the reason? People have their theories. But what I think personally, the feeling of dread that comes along with a truly haunted place. So if a tragic event occurs in a location, and technically we are all connected, and the energy of the people in that tragedy, it kind of gets sucked into the bones of the house, you're going to feel it. So just to give you an idea of the feeling of dread, this can come along with a tragedy, can come along with a restless spirit that is very negative in energy. And my own personal experience after an investigation I did back in the early 2000s, something followed me home. And that was my first experience with that feeling of dread, because at home you're supposed to be relaxed. And I wasn't, because this thing seemed to kind of hang out in the living room. And I couldn't be in the living room, especially at night. And God help you, I could never shut off the lights. That would just be the absolute worst. So something was telling me on the inside that it was something to fear inside my living room. And things also happened inside in the apartment, things moving around. At one point, dirt was sprinkled over the carpet, as if somebody took a handful and just lightly sprinkled it throughout the living room and dining room. And this happened within seconds of me leaving and coming back. So stuff was happening, the feeling of dread inside the living room. And it took me a while, my first experience after all, to realize that, something had followed me home. Because then we started realizing this ghost at the location that we were investigating was something different. The location was very haunted, things that you couldn't explain away as natural. So it had followed me home. So at that point, I talked to friends who are psychics and got the suggestion of confronting the thing and sending it away. So if this ever happens to you, just note, fear is its best weapon. So if you don't fear it and you're able to take charge, your living energy is more powerful, it can push it away. So that's what I did, standing in the living room, lights off, nighttime, close my eyes, and that feeling, it felt as if something was standing right in front of my face. And then I that was motivation enough. I got rid of it. I told it to get out, minus all the swear words, and it was gone. The air lifted in the room, the dread lifted, everything was gone. That was my home. That's where I lived. This energy didn't have any claim to that home. It lived somewhere else in the place I was investigating. So I was able to clear it. You get a house that had a tragedy inside of it, in a way, that energy is already at home. So I don't think it's something easily cleared. I don't know, a psychic can chime in and tell me if I'm wrong in this, but from the standpoint of common sense, I don't think it's something that's easily cleared. Because if it is embedded in the actual wood and material of that house, then it's sticking around. So that gives us the idea of a house being abandoned and creepy. That's why it's haunted, because the energy from the tragic event has now become a part of the structure itself. You could ask the question, if I knock down the structure and build another house, will the energy still remain? I have examples to give you, such as the Oban Inn in Niagara-on-the-Lake, where yes, that is the case. But I also have examples to give, such as the old Oxford House of Refuge that stood in Woodstock, Ontario, that it is not the case, that the energy went with the structure. So I guess it really just depends on what happened and how it seeped into that place. Now, to get to the main story of this occurring in the city of Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, this one was one that was embedded into the house. So if you look up in Hamilton, there's a street, Upper Wellington. So Hamilton is separated. There's a downtown area, And then there's what we call the mountain. It's not really a mountain, it's more of an escarpment or a hill, but we call it the mountain. Sounds cool. So there's Lower Wellington, which is Wellington, and there's Upper Wellington. So Upper Wellington Street, right when you come up from the access to the escarpment, as you're driving up, just past, oh goodness, it's either Queensdale or Brucedale, but either way, just past it, there's a police association hall, so like for events that are put on, and right beside the police association hall, there's a parking lot. Now, this parking lot used to be the location of a house. Now, the reason the house is not there anymore is what I am actually talking about today. So the house at one point had a family living in it, the Bilotti family. Not going to get into too much detail about the people themselves, but think of Amityville-esque. So in Amityville, it was George and Kathy Lutz and their family that had the experiences. In this case, it was the Bilottis. So they had rented the house and were now living in it. I believe it was the 1960s or 70s. I don't have the article in front of me right now. So they move into the house, and things already had started occurring. The usual stuff you hear in any haunted house, like doors slamming on their own and lights coming on. They heard footsteps on the second floor when they were on the first, knowing nobody was up there. And this escalated over the days and the weeks that passed, and then it got worse. And I think one of the factors that chased them out of the house was waking up in the middle of the night in the master bedroom, it was Mr. and Mrs. Bilotti, and looking up to see a disembodied face watching them sleep. If there's even a little bit of truth to that experience, I'd be out that door as well. So I don't know whether they waited till the next morning or just left in the middle of the night, but they left. They didn't come back for obvious reasons. So they had been only renting, which means there was an owner of the house. The owner never lived in the house. So at this point, the owner's like, okay, I might have some crackpots here. Sorry, I don't think they're crackpots, but that's maybe what he was thinking. And he's like, okay, I'm gonna try and rent it. Doesn't rent. Okay, I'm gonna try and sell it. Doesn't sell. This poor guy was probably very confused. Unless he was a believer in the paranormal, I think he was just extremely confused that nothing was working out for him. So in the end, he just gave up. And he sold it very cheaply. Now, I don't know if it was the police association of the city who took it over, but somebody bought it for a song with the sole reason of demolishing the house and making the parking lot. So then they start tearing down the house, and here you have these construction workers that, I'm sure are very serious men and women, and probably didn't really subscribe to the idea of a haunted house. I'm sure they heard the rumors. It was quite known around the city. But they started having experiences, and most of it was from the second floor. This is, of course, the location of the master bedroom where that really spooky occurrence happened. So they would hear footsteps, they would hear voices from up there, so much so that they delayed demolishing the house a couple times because they were afraid that somebody had snuck in. Of course, they would go up and look, and there was nobody there. So as they start tearing down the house and they tear down the walls of the upstairs rooms, I believe it was the master bedroom, but in one of the walls they found a tombstone. This is where it takes a bit of a turn. Now, I'll come back to that in a second, but I just want to talk about very quickly the reason why the house didn't sell. Now, when you walk into a house, anybody who's ever been looking for a place to live, rent or buy, when you walk into a place, you get a feeling for it. Even if you're not psychic, everybody gets a feeling for it. We all have that ability to feel the energy of a space, whether you admit it or not. So if a place feels like it's home, you're gonna buy it or you're gonna rent it. But if there's something not right about it, could be anything, could be the neighborhood, it could be the way it's set up physically, it doesn't meet your needs. But beyond that, there's also a feeling. It has to feel like home. It has to feel comfortable. So any haunted house that has a slight feeling of dread to an extreme feeling of dread, you're going to walk into it. You're going to be like, there is no way on God's green earth that I'm going to live in this place. And you're going to just be like, okay, it's done. And you're going to tell your real estate agent or whatever that I don't want it, and you're going to leave. And with a truly haunted place that has a tragic event that leaves that feeling of dread that I talked a little bit about in my experience, you're gonna run for the hills. So for that reason, houses can never sell, they can never rent, and if there's no other purpose, such as in this case on Upper Wellington, to knock down the house for a parking lot, then it just ends up being abandoned. So there's the crux of it. There's where, it goes from being a lived-in, loved-after house to being creepy, abandoned, and alone. And then you have our stereotypical view of what a haunted house is, and all those cartoons and graphics that you see, the abandoned house on the hill with the boarded up windows and the cobwebs. There's my explanation of why it ends up being abandoned and why that is a feeling of creepiness mixed in, of course, with the dread you might feel even just looking at it from outside. So that's my reasoning, but just to tie up the one loose end, the tombstones, if you're interested in that. So on Upper Wellington, you have close to the escarpment, but if you go a kilometer up the street past Stone Church, there on the left-hand side is an old pioneer cemetery. They're all over the mountain. This one belonged to the Young family, and just before the house on Upper Wellington was built, a tombstone belonging to two Young family daughters, so two little girls who had died young, and had gone missing in the middle of the night. Nobody knew where the tombstone ended up, and it ends up inside this house on Upper Wellington. I don't know why. We never figured that part out, but they believe that was causing the original restlessness. That in this case, it wasn't really a tragic event, but in a way you could say it's a instance of voodoo, because you disrupt sacred ground like a cemetery, steal this memorial to these young girls and move it into a place that's very foreign to them, that you can create a restlessness and a restless spirit or spirits. And then you have what occurred to the Bilotti family on Upper Wellington. So, talk a little bit for anybody who has a haunted house with a restless spirit. This is not something that you need to live with. And actually, I would highly recommend not living with it, because a restless spirit, in a way, can be a danger. I'm not talking about what you see in haunted horror movies of being murdered by a knife flying across the kitchen at your head. I'm not talking about that. I am talking about something that has been commonly stated, that you might be pushed on the stairs. That's probably the most dangerous it can get physically, but I am also talking emotionally. If you have a negative energy inside of a house, that it can affect you, it can affect your loved ones, and that you could be having arguments with your loved ones and not even realize why. So that is actually, in my mind, one of the even bigger dangers, because as long as you're using the handle, the banister on the stairs, that you're going to be safe. But when it comes to emotionally being affected, hitting you in your ego, hitting you in your angry moments or your off days, like I've been having these last couple days, that it just creates that unneeded stress in any loving relationship and with families and parents and kids. So for that, I would recommend attempting to clear the house. Now, how do you clear the house? A couple suggestions. First one, as I did, talk to it. Tell it you don't like the way it's acting. Tell it that this is your house now. Use your living energy to either push it away or change the situation so that the spirit just leaves you alone, and that it can be restless on its own time away from you. Then that's fine as well. So talk to it without fear, with as much calm as possible. Now, speaking of calm, keeping a calm and a high frequency of thinking and talking is a very powerful method as well. What I'm talking about is through meditation, getting to that point where even if there was an outside negative emotion that was trying to affect you, that your own negative emotions wouldn't add to it. And even a next step is that you would be so calm and positive that you would push it away as what it is. It's just an outside influence, not anything connected to you, that your body would know enough to do such a thing. So living calm, keeping a high frequency, which means staying positive in the way you think and the way you talk. Always see the good side of things and the good side of people. Avoid judgment and, try and feel love for everything, even the people who have wronged you, the enemies, so to speak, to try and feel love for them, to be able to release that negative energy. That's another way of combating, because your energy is so much more powerful that the energy of the restless whatever won't affect you. And worst case, in the end, get a psychic to help. Now, there are a lot of good psychics out there, but there are also some who are not so good, or maybe that they're knowingly trying to trick people into thinking that they are psychic. So just be careful who you get. You can get references from people who have used the psychic before, that you can see them, like if they've done any type of interview or if they're talking on YouTube, look up videos of them and try and ask the question, okay, could they have possibly known what they were talking about? Like if they're doing a reading on video. For example, I saw this one psychic on CNN, and because I'm so jaded to it and I've had experience in this, I was watching her ask questions of the person she was reading, and the person would give answers, and then later in the reading she would use the answers as if it was coming to her through psychic ability. And it was so obvious to me, and I think it was Larry King who was the host at the time, and he didn't pick up on it. But you can look for stuff like that, so references and videos and whatnot. Get psychic help to come in. I might even be able to point you in the right direction if you send me a message, just to let me know. Okay, that's it. Well, so hopefully you understand what I'm getting at when it comes to abandoned and haunted houses, but I'll leave it at that. We'll take another pause for a few seconds, and then get into the strange news. Not even bother asking if anything happened. I don't know. This doesn't feel like the most energetic of shows to happen. I think after the holidays, maybe once these crazy lockdowns and everything start to calm down, I think the world will feel much better then. But we're not the only ones having weird experiences, and this is when I get into the strange news. So this is articles that have been written from different locations. Doesn't matter when they were written. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter when or the location. It's just something that resonates with me. And so I haven't pre-read any of these articles. I want to react and hear it at the same time that you are. So let me get the first one up here. New Jersey home haunted by the Watcher sells at $400,000 less than it was listed. This is from the phillyvoice.com, and the article is by an author named Michael Tannenbaum. The owners of a Westfield home, this is in New Jersey, that was targeted with creepy anonymous letters has finally sold the property, taking a $400,000 loss after years of media attention and attempts to redevelop the lot. Ooh, anonymous letters. This is how you set up a mysterious article. Mr. Tannenbaum is doing a good job of that. Derek and Maria Broaddus. Derek and Maria Broaddus sold the Dutch Colonial Revival on July 1st. I don't know what year this is. Sorry about that. Sold the Dutch Colonial Revival on July 1st at a price of $959,360. well below the $1.4 million they spent on the property in 2014. The Broaddus's left the home after they began receiving letters from an unknown writer who claimed to have served as a spirit at the property for some 20 years. So wait a minute, hold on a second. The writer is claiming to be the ghost? So it looks like that a ghost wrote some letters to this family saying it served as a spirit at the property for some 20 years. The writer made alarming references to the Broaddus's children, welcoming their young blood into the home. Oh man, that is creepy. When the Broaddus's learned that the previous owner had also received the letters, they filed a lawsuit claiming that the existence of the Watcher should have been disclosed. The suit was dismissed. That's an interesting thought. Side note, that if you had somebody who was stalking a house, I mean, there's a lot of crazy people out there. If somebody was stalking a house and, I don't know, like, I think I'm on the side of the Broaddus's here. That's, I think that should be disclosed. I mean, if the police can't find this person and they're causing the house that kind of problem, like it's connected to the house, right? This crazy person, maybe they lived there at one time. I don't know. I wish I was a detective on the case. I'd find him. I'd find the Watcher. So the suit was dismissed, unfortunately. That's from me. Continuing. A criminal investigation to determine the identity of the Watcher has never turned up an answer, but interest in the story has attracted the likes of Netflix producers. Okay, this explains. I was wondering why there was Netflix in the address of this article. Now I know. Attracted the likes of Netflix producers who've acquired the rights to the Broaddus's family's ordeal. There's actually a link here on the Netflix. Netflix wins heated auction for the film rights to the Dreamhouse nightmare tale, The Watcher. Did this happen? Okay, so they're saying that there was a movie called The Watcher that was set for Netflix based on this? Is this Watcher Netflix 2016? Unaware of its terrible history, a young couple purchases their dream home, but it soon becomes clear it may not be alone in the house and that someone or something is determined to drive them out. Is this it? Oh my goodness. This actually is based on it? Oh, it must be. Okay, alright. So just side note, there is a movie called The Watcher. It says it's on Netflix. Let me, I also have Netflix. You see guys, I'm prepared for anything that occurs. I am ready. Okay. Ooh, Midnight Sky. That looks, oh, that's the George Clooney movie. The Watcher. The Witcher has come up. Okay, well this might be it. I'm gonna look it up, see if I can watch it. So everybody, The Watcher, it looks like it was a 2016 film that was based on what I am reading here. I've gotten completely off topic, so let me get back to the article. So it required the rights to the Broaddus's family ordeal. The home was rented out at various points as the Broadduses sought a solution to their dilemma. An attempt to tear the house down and redevelop the lot into two. How is this going to help? Maybe the guy was attached to the house and he'll stop writing ghostly letters because of, I don't know. So the attempt to tear down the house and redevelop the lot into two homes met stiff resistance from residents in the upscale section of the wealthy neighborhood. I don't know. If it's a weirdo targeting the house, wouldn't they would rather have no weirdo stalking their streets? I don't know. I haven't seen the movie yet. Final chapter is that considering the property's notoriety, it may be difficult to determine whether any future letters to the new homeowner are in the work of the original Watcher or others attempting to perpetuate the story with a prank. That's where the article ends. Let me see if I can get the date on this article. I think it's really old. Oh no, it's 2019. I don't know. Look into if that movie The Watcher from 2016 is this story, and this Michael Tannenbaum just came to the party late. I'd be very interested in knowing. I'm gonna look up the movie myself. Maybe I'll give an update down the road. So basic idea that some crazy person who is definitely not a ghost. I've never heard of a ghost putting pen to paper. Maybe they send an email. I know they would try and phone, because that's one of the freakiest things. I hate it when things happen with the phone. But that's another story. So interesting. So in the end, I agree with the Brodicises that they should have been given a refund on the house and the ability to move away, because that is something that definitely needs to be disclosed, that there is a psychopath that is interested in your home and everybody who lives in it. Just my own opinion. Final thing, a story here that I kind of teased. It's related to Mark Twain. If you don't know the famous author, then you've been living under a rock your entire life. Mark Twain, the Huck Finn, and oh my God. That's how you know you're having an off day, when you blank on the books of Mark Twain. Books. Adventures of Huck Finn. Oh no, Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, Adventures of Tom Sawyer, and other ones that only real fans will know of. Yeah, I think I only read Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Okay, so this is from a larger article. I'm not going to read the entire thing, but it's basically talking about 5 St. Louis, Missouri ghost stories that just won't die. So I guess they're sticking around for future generations. Of course, the name Mark Twain stood out to me, and this story is titled Mark Twain's Ghostwriter. In the spring of 1916, a dozen ladies from St. Louis's society sat gathered around a Ouija board, hoping to channel lost relatives. Instead, they claimed to have conjured the spirit of America's greatest author, Mark Twain. Every scribe here wants a pencil on earth, the planchette spelled out as it moved around the board. Mark Twain had died 6 years earlier with unfinished business, according to the spirit that identified itself as Lazy Sam, or Samuel Clemens, which is the author's real name. Mark Twain still had a few more books in him, and he had in mind the perfect ghostwriter. That person, participating in the seance that day, was Emily Grant Hutchins. He's a former resident of Hannibal, Twins' birthplace. Not familiar with that town. So there's a woman at the Ouija board here who I guess is a ghostwriter, Emily Grant Hutchins, and if it wasn't for Mark Twain dying, she would have been his ghostwriter. Now, one of the most celebrated journalists of her time, Hutchins had made a name for herself as a freelance writer for national magazines, such as the Atlantic Monthly and Cosmopolitan, and as an anonymous pen behind the St. Louis Globe Democrat's juicy gossip column. She was also a budding spiritualist who, with the help of a medium named Lola Hayes, dived into the months-long task of transcribing Twain's novel letter by letter through the Ouija board. What? Okay, so they're saying that the ghost of Mark Twain is writing a novel through the Ouija board. Oh, I wish they said the... Okay, it was 1916. So when did Mark Twain die? (1910). Oh yeah, so it was 6 years before. So he's just dead, and he's writing a new letter through the Ouija board, or a new novel through the Ouija board. Continuing, in the fall of 1916, Hutchins published Jap Heron, J-A-P space Herron, the story of a Missouri farm boy born into poverty who becomes a cutthroat newspaper publisher. The subtitle of the work read, "A Novel Written from the Ouija Board." How have I not heard of this? Oh, yeah. Sorry, there's a Wikipedia page if anybody's interested. Jap Heron. Anyway, I'll read over that later. An editor from the San Francisco Chronicle marveled at the book's authenticity, adding that two women couldn't possibly invent Twain's trademark profanity and sauciness. Okay, everyone, I need to claim that's 1916. That nobody would ever say that today, for good reasons. A review from the New York Times was less complimentary of the 230-page novel. If this is the best that Mark Twain can do, so this is the quote from New York Times, if this is the best that Mark Twain can do by reaching across the barrier, the army of admirers that his works have won for him will all hope that he will hereafter respect that boundary. Oh, I wish they said the name of the author from the New York Times. Okay, that's funny. That is funny. So his fans would be like, if this is the best you can do, just stay dead. Meanwhile, Hutchinson's found herself in trouble with Twain's daughter, Clara Clemens, and the author's former publisher, Harper and Brothers, now known as HarperCollins. Both sued on copyright claims, and Hutchins and her publisher agreed to discontinue publication. That's interesting. Again, you got to think about it. It is technically this woman's work, so it's her writing, and I guess you could make the claim, maybe not copyright, that's the wrong word for it. You can make the claim of trademark, so that she's using Mark Twain's name to sell her book. So I disagree with copyright. I think it should have been trademark, but that's just me. Henry Sweets, curator of the Mark Twain Boyhood Home and Museum in Hannibal, says that despite the embarrassment caused by Jap Heron, Hutchins and her husband Edwin remained committed to exploring proof of life after death. The couple never had any children, and Emily Hutchins died in relative obscurity in 1960 in her home in the central West End of Hannibal. She reportedly suffered dementia for many years. In obituaries, few remembered her as anything more than the widow of Edwin Hutchins. No mentions were made of her literary career or love affair with the Ouija board. Miles Hochstein, son of Emily's grandniece. Okay, so we're going down the line here. I guess this is somebody who's alive today. So Miles Hochstein, son of Emily's grandniece, says spiritualism does not run in the family. He recalls his mother referring to Emily dismissively, often mocking her claims to the spirit world. Hochstein, a professional geological researcher, so kind of a scientific type, who lives in Oregon, says he tried to read his great-aunt's novel but could never finish it. Okay, that's not a good reference. If your own living blood relative can't get through it, then that's more scathing than saying that Mark Twain should stay dead if it came with him. He is quoted as saying, this is Hochstein, "If you pick up Jap Heron, you will see that it is more or less unreadable," he says. "That was my experience, anyway. It is truly an awful piece of writing." He said, I'm going to read it. I'm going to try and read it. He says the family was never sure if Aunt Emily was a sincere spiritualist or a fraud out for a quick buck. According to family lore, Emily was the alternative sister, the one who often struggled to make ends meet. So I guess you consider like the black sheep of the family. In 1932, Cyril Clemens published a book of letters that belonged to his famous cousin, Samuel, Mark Twain. Included in the trove were at least 2 fan letters from Emily Hutchins, seriously, from the summer of 1902, after she'd met Twain at a reading in St. Louis. According to Sweets, at the Mark Twain Museum, the famous novelist and humorist scrawled the word idiot on the envelope of his final letter before filing it away in a box. Well, you know what? Good on Mark Twain to keep the letter. I don't know if I like the word idiot. He calls the woman an idiot. I guess you would expect that from Mr. Mark Twain, so it kind of makes sense. This is interesting. I highly recommend finding and reading this book. I got the Wikipedia page. If you just do a search for Jap Heron in Google, you'll get to where I am. JAP space HERRON. Was saying that we are ending. I thought it'd be earlier, but decently earlier. Thanks for listening to the podcast. I hope that people are getting enjoyment out of this as much as I am enjoying recording them. And as we go into the holidays and these interesting times, I want to wish the best to everyone. So So all the best and happy holidays to you and your families. Thank you for listening.